Welcome, warriors. This week, I get to speak with a man whose parents were told he would never speak again after a tragic accident he experienced as a teenager. Grab a tissue and prepare to be wowed by my guest and his determination, as well as the many miracles that occurred on his road to recovery. Let's rock. Does your past haunt you? Maybe you're in a storm that feels like it will never end. Are you fighting a battle that's rendering you hopeless? Maybe you feel like you're fighting alone, but your battle was not meant to be a solo endeavor. You were meant to be a warrior among warriors. My name is Heather, and I grew up thinking my battles were nobody's business until I found myself in an abusive marriage and felt cut off from all avenues of help. In this podcast, you will hear warriors' words. They will tell you of their battles, both won and lost, their journeys, and their lessons learned along the way. But we don't stop there. These warriors will share how they have applied those lessons to go from warrior to survivor to thriver. Whether it's an abusive marriage, illness, mental health crisis, or any number of traumas this world dishes out, these warriors will use their words to help you find the beauty in your broken, move beyond your battles, and become the thriver God created you to be. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome back to the Warrior Words podcast. This week's guest is Nick Prefontaine, a 3-time best-selling author. He is a speaker, founder, and CEO of Common Goal. He was named a top motivational speaker of 2022 in Yahoo Finance. Using the STEP system, he is able to lead clients through their trauma. Once they make it through, that is where the limitless potential lies. Nick's been featured in Brains Media, Sway, and Authority magazine. But before we hear Nick's story, here is a review from Cheyenne F. Great podcast. A must listen. You won't regret it. Thanks, Cheyenne. I love that phrase, must listen. And I agree. No regrets here. I appreciate you. Would you like me to read your review on an upcoming episode? Please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review for the show. Your comments and star ratings help people find the Warrior Words podcast, and it only takes a few minutes of your time. And the Warrior Words Facebook group is now open. Come and join us for inspirational stories, lessons learned, and beauty bombs. What's a beauty bomb? Well, you'll just have to come to the group to find out. So go to facebook.com/groups/warrior words and hit the request to join button. A few questions will pop up after you hit request. Please answer those as they help me to prepare content and help me serve you better. And then I look forward to getting to know you better there. Now, on to the show. Hi, everyone. As you heard in the intro, we are blessed to have Nick Prefontaine here with us today to share his story. So welcome to the Warrior Words podcast, Nick.
Heather, I'm so excited to be here, and I can't wait for this conversation.
Well, thank you. Glad we were able to work out a time. And I would just like you to start at the beginning, because I understand this pivotal moment in your life happened when you were a young teenager.
Yeah, so I was actually on my way to ski club. I was in 8th grade, and we got released early. For anyone that remembers when you were in middle school or high school, it was always exciting when you got released a little bit early, and that's what we did. That's what we had to do for a ski club. So in 8th grade, I was with my friends headed on the way to the mountain, and all my friends, myself and my friends, brought our snowboard gear onto the bus to get ready, so we wouldn't miss a precious moment once we got to the mountain. And we got to the mountain, the rest of the class wasted time and went inside and took their time and everything, but not us. We were ready. So we headed right for the chairlift. And on the way up, we noticed Heather, that it was very icy because it had been raining earlier in the day, so
Hmm.
people were wiping out everywhere. However, that didn't phase us. We weren't phased by that. And the chairlift actually went right over the terrain park where all of the jumps were. And I knew as soon as I saw it that I had to go off the biggest jump in the terrain park. I mean, there really wasn't even a moment of thinking, oh, should I do it today or should I not do it today because it may be a little icy. I knew that was what I was doing. It was, I mean, really, it was almost a foregone conclusion. In my mind, I was thinking about what we were going to do after I landed that huge trick. Like we could either go and grab a burger and fries in the lodge, or we could head over to the other chairlift for some runs on those trails. I was just happy to be there finally. So finally, I got to the top, buckled into my snowboard, took a breath of that crisp winter air, and confidently charged towards that jump with all my speed. And then going up to the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard, and that was the last thing that I remember.
Hmm.
Now, I was told that I landed on my head and I wasn't wearing a helmet.
Mm. Okay.
Later, and I pieced together all the rest of the details of that day based on eyewitness accounts and hospital staff, doctors and nurses and everything, and people who were there. So I learned that I'd landed on my head and I wasn't wearing a helmet. And the other thing that I learned, there were three pivotal moments that really changed my life and is really why I'm able to live to tell this story. And you and I were talking offline, Heather. I believe everything happens for a reason. So I believe this was God at play in my life. So the first one was I didn't have a helmet on. However, I had a pair of goggles. And for those of you who aren't watching this, I'm signaling the goggles, like ski and snowboard goggles on your head. So the goggles that I wore were very thick and they had a lot of padding. I learned that not only did they brace my fall between my head and the ice, as I continued to hit my head and continued to roll down the mountain, the goggles moved with each impact to brace
Okay.
my fall every time my head, just because it wasn't one initial hit. It was,
Right.
I kept hitting my head and rolling down the mountain. So my goggles moved with each impact. Secondly, they wanted to bring a helicopter because of the severity of my injuries. However, they couldn't because it was too windy. So Heather, they sent in an ambulance. Out of all the paramedics in the county, there was only one who could intubate on the spot. And he was one of the paramedics that showed up to the mountain that day. So that's the second thing.
Yeah.
The third thing, once I made it to the hospital, I was out. I was out for the count. And
Hmm.
they actually talked about the fact that just based on the impact alone, I would have been out for 7 to 10 days at a minimum. Just from the hit. It was so severe. However, they were worried that if I woke up and panicked and worried, who are you people? What am I
Hmm.
doing here? The swelling in my brain, which was already really high, it would increase even more and I would die. So they had to induce me into a coma so that my body could heal, so that the swelling could come down. The doctors initially came in, the only people who were allowed in my room were my parents. And
Right.
the doctors, no fault of their own, they came into the room to share the not so positive news, not
Hmm.
so positive news, and not so positive news. And they went to speak right in front of me. They figured, oh, they're just doing their job. He's in a coma. He's not going to
Right.
hear me. So I'm going to tell the prognosis to his parents. My mom, and I used to say up until a few months ago that my parents stopped the doctors. And my dad, I was on his podcast a couple months ago, and he said, no, wait a minute. I don't want to take credit for that. It wasn't me, it was your mom. So my mom
Oh,
stopped them and she said, no, no, not in front of him. Because she understood that even though I was out, I was in a coma, I was still taking in information,
right.
whether through the unconscious, the subconscious. I always confuse those two still to this day. I and no matter how many times I look it up and I read the definition, I always confuse it. So
No worries.
anyway, the information wasn't able to get through to me. So she made the doctors step outside. And once they were outside my room, that's where the doctors shared that, uh, look, he's been in a snowboarding accident and he already has swelling in his brain. And we don't know how long he's going to be in his coma. And even if he does come out, he's probably not going to be able to walk, talk, or eat on his own ever again.
And here you are. Yes.
And now, thank you. And because none of that was able to get through to me, get through to my mind in any form, I was able to treat my recovery like any other situation in my life. So I was in a coma for 3 weeks. I really don't remember a month. Because it was a partially induced coma. I was coming off the drugs and medication. So it allowed me to treat it like any other situation, which was as soon as I was able to, figuratively, at first,
Right.
not definitely not literally at first, because it wasn't like in the movies where you see someone come out of a coma and they open their eyes and like, oh, okay, what's going on? Um, it definitely doesn't happen like that. So I slowly came out of it. I mean, Heather, I've even seen videos of myself in the
Mhm.
intensive care unit with my eyes open. I wouldn't say looking around, but with my eyes open. And I have no memory of the intensive care unit.
Oh, wow.
However, an interesting thing happened though. I was invited back to UMass Memorial, the intensive care unit where I was in Worcester, at the hospital where I was. I was invited a year or two after my accident to
Mhm.
speak at a groundbreaking ceremony. And before I spoke there, I went up to the ICU and I was like, God, this place looks so familiar. Like everything right down to the layout of the floor, the rooms, and right down to the faces of the doctors and nurses. I mean, I feel like I knew them, but I couldn't put my finger on it. So it allowed me to treat it once I came out of the coma and I was able to get my feet under me, so to speak. I was able to treat it like any other situation, and that was get up, do the best that I could, and I kept getting better every day. And it was right around this time that I started unknowingly utilizing a system to not only make a full recovery, but run out of the hospital. And that's what I teach in my keynotes to like brain injury associations and other organizations that support individuals that are dealing with trauma. That's a step system. It stands for support. Support. You have to make sure that you have the support of your family and friends
Mhm.
right from the beginning. And this is going to have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback.
Right.
T
Mhm.
is trust. Trust that once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be available to you. And this is also about trusting that voice that you have inside of yourself. So I can touch on this now and then I can come back to it later because it's super important and
Okay.
what we were talking about a little bit offline. So, very early on in my recovery, right around the time when I got transported, a month when I came out of the coma and I was getting off all the medication and everything, a month after my accident, I was transported to a rehab hospital in Boston, and that's where I began my journey. And I would hear my parents, and this was before I was able to talk.
Mhm.
I had to learn how to talk again. So I overheard my parents having a conversation with my therapist and doctors, and they were saying, okay, what do we have to do to make sure Nick makes a full recovery? And this was even before I could talk. And I heard in the back of my head, no, you're going to run out of the hospital. So then running out of the hospital became our common goal. And what we are all working towards daily and weekly um, to help make that a reality. So this isn't even something that I usually talk about on podcasts because I don't have the good fortune and the ability to share this, but I absolutely think that God was at play there.
Mhm.
That's part of the voice in the back of your head. It is God speaking to you.
Right.
That's part of it, and I wanted to draw special attention to this just because I think by listening to it,
Mhm.
you're doing exactly what you were put on this earth to do. Um,
Right.
and I feel that, and I'll touch on it later if we have time, which I have a feeling we will. Uh, so E is energy. Energy, by maintaining your energy, you're allowing your body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. And medication has the potential to get in the way of that. I mean, obviously within reason here, Heather, because that
Right.
first night in the hospital after my accident cost $250,000. And that
Oh,
was in
wow.
2003. So probably more than $250,000. Um,
Yeah.
and it was like I had to have that pumped into me. I needed that to be able to live, to be able to survive.
Right.
It wasn't like after my snowboarding accident, I could have said, no, no, no. I want to just treat this all natural and
Yeah.
I don't want that stuff. So however, after I came out of the coma, I had to like get off of all that medication. So unless it was absolutely critical to my survival, uh, my parents opted not to have me on any medicine. And this is so important that later in my life, later in this recovery, after I
Mhm.
ran out of the hospital, and I got my wits about me, so to speak, I started seeking out people on my own, naturopathic doctors, things like that, to help get all the toxins out of my body. And I still see my naturopathic doctor once a year for a review and a few treatments, and also a Taoist Tai Chi and Qigong master that's also taught me how to meditate. And I see him monthly. I see him monthly for something called Tui Na. And he, like I said, also taught me how to meditate. So that's a little bit about energy. And then P is persistence. So persistence, once you take your first step, your next I'm sorry. P is persistence.
Right.
By continuing to move forward every day, you are building an unstoppable momentum, and even a small amount. So doing something every day in your recovery. And I can remember early on in my recovery that I was, in fact, doing something, Heather, every day, whether it was just extra exercises like weights and things like that. And
Hmm.
by doing something every day, I'm not saying I was doing 8 or 10 hour days every day.
Right.
However, by doing something, I was building an unstoppable momentum. Uh, and then if you fast forward a little bit, less than 60 days after being transported to the rehab hospital, I realized my goal of running out of the hospital.
Yeah, I
And
thought you gave us a little bit of a spoiler alert a few minutes ago when you said running out of the hospital, and I wanted to make sure we got back to that. So how exactly did you just by doing something every day, or was there anything specific that really helped you run when they told you you wouldn't even walk?
Well, it's everything. And it's everything that I'm talking about. So, yeah, it's focus, it's making sure you have the support. And then once you have the support lined up, it's trusting that once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be available to you. And then energy, by maintaining your energy, you're building your body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. And then as long as you have those things, you're able to focus on your your persistence. So once you take your first step, just keep moving forward every day,
That
taking
is, yeah.
taking your next step. So after running out of the hospital, it wasn't like my work was done. I had to continue to go to outpatient therapy for another 6 months,
Mm,
um, along with being tutored all summer long, 5 days a week, in order to continue on to high school with the rest of my classmates.
right. That's right. Because you were 14, so you were still in school. Yeah, that's right. You
Yeah,
did you did say eighth grade. That's right. So you would have started high school. Exactly. Yeah.
and they actually said to me, so they said to me that, oh no, take your time, just focus on your recovery, and then you can take over
Mhm.
eighth grade next year. So just for we understand you're still focusing on your recovery and getting stronger and everything. And I didn't want to do that. So I'm like, no, I think I want to continue on to high school. So they said, all right, well, if you want to do that, you're going to have to be tutored all summer long, 5 days a week, in order to go on to high school with the rest of my classmates and keep up with the coursework
Well,
and
do you
everything
think
like that.
do you think then that tutoring, because then you're focusing on your mind, and if you're solely focused on the body, trying to heal the body, then maybe your mind isn't as engaged or isn't as active as it used to be. And then maybe you lose ground there. So having the duality that you're working on your body and your mind simultaneously, I think
Mm.
that kind of also that helps with that healing process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that comes into play is that I, all right, so after my accident, I tried to, they gave me a pen and pen or pen and paper, pencil and paper, and like had see if I could write letters and like do
Mhm.
little things when I was in the hospital. And I was right-handed. I'm naturally right-handed. So I would start to write and I would have tremors, minor tremors in my right hand for fine motor, like
Mhm.
writing.
Right.
So it required a lot of energy for me. And I was able to do it. It required a lot of energy and a lot of focus and time. And it took me until after getting out of the hospital until I realized that I'm like, hey, I don't have tremors in my left hand. Why don't I just write with my left hand? So I started writing with my left hand, and I still write with my left hand to this day. And my writing is actually a lot better than what it was.
Us,
Um,
us lefties, yeah, we have neat handwriting, right?
yeah, it compared to what it was, yeah. So it's a little surreal to me though, Heather, that only because I'm sure you can relate to this, your audience can relate to this, that after so when you're younger, when you're growing up, time is compressed almost. So if you look 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, it seems like a lifetime away. That's
Yeah.
so far away. However, it's not really that far. It's not really that far. So only only 18 months after finishing rehab from my snowboarding accident, from being in a coma and having to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again, I got my start in real estate. And that was door knocking pre-foreclosure doors. So homeowners that have received the notice of default letter
Mhm.
from the bank, meaning that they had missed a few payments and the bank still hadn't foreclosed. So I would go around and knock on their door and try to set up a meeting for one of our investors to meet with them about potentially buying their home. And we have a mutual friend, coach, mentor in common, and that's Trisha Brooke. And I mean, it took her pointing out, she was the one that pulled this step system out of me, by the way, because she said, okay, all right, so you got in your accident, you ran out of the hospital, how'd you do it? And I was like, I don't know. I just got up every day and I did it. I worked. And she goes, no, not good enough. So she kept asking me
Mhm.
to a point where I was almost frustrated. And I was like, I don't know. So the reason I brought her up is she was the one that pointed this out to me, in that by going door to door, helping people out of their unfortunate situation, so soon to my snowboarding accident, it was part of my recovery. Like going door to door and helping people out of their unfortunate situation. I never looked at it like that because to
Mhm.
me, being 14 and being 16 it was light years away.
Right.
However,
Yeah.
it's really not that much time. Um, and that's really how the next the next part of my story, I guess you could say, kind of falls into place. So after high school, I got my real estate license and was a realtor full time for 6 years. Right around 2004, end of 2014, about 10 years ago, I started helping my dad with the marketing of his properties that he was getting as an investor, a real estate investor, excuse me. And then that turned into working with the buyers that were inquiring off of all the marketing that I was helping him with, I was doing. And then that's kind of part of what I'm doing today, is helping our associates all over the country, once they get properties under agreement, to work with them to what the systems and processes and tools that they have to do, in order to put a buyer through a process that they're going to be successful and get to the end of their agreement and get their finance and get their loan. So with that, I have had the opportunity to speak and tell my story, and I've always had this since my accident, back to the voice in the back of your head. So I've always
Mhm.
had this
Yeah.
voice in the back of my head since I got out of school, since I got out of high school, saying, yeah, okay, that's great. You're being successful. You're whatever, making sales, making money, and you're able to meet your goals and everything like that. But what you really need to be doing is helping individuals, other trauma survivors, to get through their trauma and thrive with the rest of their lives. So I've always had that
Mhm.
voice. I've always had that voice in the back of my head, and I ignored it for so long,
Yeah.
and I kept doing what I was doing. However, in 2019, someone approached me, and you actually might know her because you know of Trisha. It was Sharon Spano. She
Mhm. No.
she no.
No,
Okay,
doesn't.
I figured I'd throw it out. You never
You
know.
never know.
Yeah. So she saw me speak at one of our events, and I've always got the opportunity to tell my story because of our real estate coaching and consulting business. We have several events a few times a year, our main one being our QLS, which is every September. So in 2019, I spoke and shared my story, and it was a 20 or 25-minute version of my story. And I shared it, and Sharon came up to me after and she complimented me on it and said, you have an amazing story. If you're ever looking to fine tune your message and to bring it to another level so that it can have maximum impact and you're able to affect and impact the most amount of people possible. I can introduce you to some people, I can open some doors for you. And at the time, I was still going through an issue that I was having with my voice. So in 2012, I developed a voice issue, and I was looking. It was actually about this time I was starting to realize there was an issue. And I was looking everywhere for answers, and I just couldn't figure it out.
Mhm.
I went to my general physician, my doctor, and I was like, "Well, what is going on?" He tested all my levels. I'm like, "No, I don't know. You're great. Everything's great." I kept seeing all these doctors and specialists and everything, and no one knew what the answer was.
Mm.
And then I started to go to speech therapy on my own because I figured, well, I had to learn how to talk again once. Why couldn't I do it again?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I started going to speech therapists on my own locally, and I have a tendency to I don't want to say overdo. I just that might be the appropriate word, but like if someone tells me that I have to do something twice a day, I'm doing it 4 times a day. So uh
Gotcha.
I went to this local speech therapist, and she gave me voice exercises that I was to do every day. So if she told me I was to do them twice a day, I was doing them 4 times a day. And I started seeing her in November of 2012. And then by April, I was seeing her like three to 4 times a week.
Oh, wow.
And the exercises that she gave me, like she gave me different exercises and things to do, they helped, but I wasn't really fixing the problem. And at this point, it would have been really easy to give up.
Yeah.
However, I know that by taking things one step at a time, it can really be the solution to all of life's problems. So I had a final appointment with them in May, and they said that they have tried everything that they can think of, and the only thing that they can recommend is that I go and see this voice specialist in Boston. So a year after I first started looking for answers, I wound up in this voice specialist office, and he walked in the room, heard me speak, and right away nonchalantly goes, "Oh, that? Yeah, we deal with that all the time. We'll get it
Oh
fixed
my
in no
goodness.
time." Yeah.
You just have,
So
it's about finding the right person who,
absolutely.
you know,
Yeah, so I started receiving Botox injections into my vocal folds along with their higher level um voice therapist, their speech therapist, which is like a step above my like going to a local speech therapist.
Mhm.
And I had to get that done for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
So, however, because I took one step at a time, I now have my voice back for a second time. So the last Botox injection that I needed was in February of 2020, right before the world shut down,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
And I no longer have a problem with my voice. Obviously, I'm sharing my story with you now,
Yes.
and I speak and deliver keynotes, 50 minutes, 60-minute keynotes to like brain injury associations and things like that. But it's always been back to the voice in the back of your head and how God plays into this. It's always been that voice has always been there. No matter what I'm doing, it's always been there. However, I always hung on to Sharon's card that approached me in
Mhm.
2019 after hearing me speak. And so it's a long way to say I just wanted to set the stage for that because the whole reason why I didn't reach out to Sharon right away was I was still going through the final throes of my voice issue.
Mhm.
And I wasn't ready yet. However, I always hung on to her card, and a year and a half later, a little more than a year and a half later, in May of 2021, I finally reached out to her and I said, okay, I'm ready. What should I do? She introduced me to Trisha.
Mhm.
And since I made that phone call to Trisha, there has been no voice in the back of my head. So what that's evidence to me of is that I'm doing exactly what I was put on this earth to do, and that's God's work. I'm doing God's work by following that voice in the back of my head, helping trauma survivors get through their trauma and thrive with the rest of their lives.
Yeah. So before you were helping homeowners, and I believe you still are in that line of work, right? Am I right? Or
I'm
you're
still
still
involved. I'm
you're
still
still
involved
involved?
in the family real estate business. I won't ever stop doing real estate. I'll do real estate all my life.
But so I guess my reason for saying that was that, so you were involved in that and you mentioned, yeah, you were successful and you were making money, but you still had that nagging voice.
Mm.
And as soon as you let it go and you said, okay, now I'm ready, and you made that phone call, and now you're helping others in a completely different way. And so I think that's marvelous, I guess is the word that comes to mind. Um,
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And
but
I feel like it was because I know we touched on it before we started. I feel like both of those things, even though I didn't follow that voice in the beginning, both of those things were needed for me to get through, so that I'm
mm,
able to help other individuals get through their trauma and thrive with the rest of their lives. Because after I did it the second time, so the first time was my snowboarding accident. It was just, I was 14 years old. It was something I did. It was so short if you really think of it.
yeah.
So I never thought that was a big deal. However, once I
Mm,
did it again, overcoming my voice issue, and that I might have recency bias, but that because it happened more recently, but
yeah.
that took 8 years to really, from when it started to when I got my voice back, that took 8 years. So once I got through that, I think I was in a better position to say, all right, I have something here. There's something here that I need to share with the world, to share with people, um, to help them do exactly what I've done. And that's exactly what I did with reaching out to Trisha and starting the work that I'm doing with a common goal. So sorry, I think I cut you off. I just wanted to get that thought out.
Oh no, not at all. But another word actually has woven itself through this conversation, and I keep hearing it in my head, and that is the word determination. And I see that in the very beginning of your story when you, as a bright-eyed 14-year-old kid, determined to go down that toughest, um, is it a trail? Is that what it's called? What is
That
a
was a
jump?
jump.
A
Biggest,
jump.
yeah.
You were determined, you had that 14-year-old, I can do anything, almost invincible type determination. And then I think because it kind of goes back to what you were talking about with support, you say that you have to rely on what you had before. Now, I think your support can evolve and incorporate more people, but you specifically mentioned going back to what you had before. And I think that that is also evidenced in your determination to heal and your determination to run, not walk, but run out of the hospital. So I saw that determination again because your mother would not allow anyone to dissuade you from your common goal of running out of the hospital. And then when you mentioned if somebody gives you an assignment or exercises to do 2 times a day, you're going to do it 4 times a day. And I know you used the word overdo it, but and that may be true, but I'm seeing determination again. And I'm just seeing that all the way through your story is this determination that you have to heal, to succeed, to thrive, and now to help others to do that as well. And I, it's to me, that's a beautiful word, determination. So yeah, that's what I've heard through this whole thing. I think that it's an incredible story, and I am so glad to hear that you have switched to helping others to thrive, especially after their injuries and their setbacks. And
Oh, thank you. I'd love to take credit for it, for the determination, but literally that has been always just following, following that voice in my head, following that calling, and following that call. Doing what I'm doing today is following that calling. And since I've been on this path, it's just amazing the number of things that have fallen into place
Mhm.
for me because and how much better and how much, believe it or not, how much better and how much easier and more fulfilling life is becoming by following that calling. And I think we can all learn from that, in that there were so many years where I heard that voice in the back of my head, like, you should be telling your story from stage and helping individuals that are going through trauma to get through and thrive with the rest of their lives. I've heard that voice for years.
Mhm.
And and I think so many of us do this. I've always discounted it and thought, I don't know,
Yes.
I could never do that. What,
Uh-huh.
me? Like, why would I be able to do that? I wouldn't be able to make a living out of that, or I can't support myself doing that, or who's gonna pay me to do that? All those what if questions,
Mhm.
and trying to rationalize it away, like, that's that's not practical, is another one. And why would I have the ability to do that? I think so many of us discount that voice in the back of our heads, and I think conversely, by tuning into that, um, like I talked about earlier, Heather, I feel like really it's doing God's work. I really feel that. I really feel that way. So I mean, I appreciate the compliments. I'll take them all day long, but I really think that's just because I followed the instruction from the divine, if you will.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That was a very good point. And I think though, we do have to recognize, like you have recognized your past ignoring of that voice and the instructions. Um, and then so then you recognize that now you're following that, and now you don't have that nagging anymore. And as you mentioned, life is a little bit easier, if you will, when you go with the flow as opposed to against the grain. So
Mhm.
so no, I love that. And so a lot of what we talk about here on the Warrior Words podcast is surviving and thriving. And you have shared with us so beautifully how you did survive and used your step program that Trisha helped bring out. And I'm going to put Trisha's her podcast in the show notes so everybody else can hear who we're talking about. um,
Awesome. Yeah.
but how she helped to bring that out of you a little bit, and then now that describing how you're thriving today and helping others to thrive. So the other thing that I like to talk about is finding beauty in the broken. And I think you've said some things, but is there one specific thing, maybe looking back now, if you could narrow it down to one thing that shows you that even in the most horrific situation, when you're facing the potential loss of your life, or the use of your legs, or the use of your voice, is there anything that stands out to you as being beautiful, or at least hope filled?
Yeah. That's a great question. I would say I would say both times that I've had to overcome adversity. So in the hospital, what I'm thinking of is there was a time when I was in a wheelchair and it was in between therapies because I had double sessions of physical, occupational, and speech
Hmm.
therapy.
Hmm.
And after which we would break for lunch. So is that one of these breaks in my hospital room when a moment of doubt crept in? And the reason I like to share this is because I think we all can have doubt.
Hmm.
It's like people hear my story and they think, "Oh, great, easy for you. You've got an accident, you've been out of the hospital." Well, no, I'm not like a superhero.
Right.
I, but all right, so this time when the moment of doubt crept in, I was in a wheelchair just looking over my situation and I just couldn't figure it out for whatever reason. And I remember turning to my mom and asking, "Am I ever going to be able to walk again?"
Mm.
And she didn't even hesitate. Of course you are. That's what we're doing here is so you can get everything back and we can go home. So this one moment of doubt, when I had it, my support was, which was my mom at the time. She was with me every day, going to every therapy and doctor's appointment, was able to give me that confidence that I was able to keep moving forward. And I think this is so important that you need to have that blind faith that you're going to get to the other side. But this is really that would be a beautiful moment, I guess, if you will,
Yeah.
um, that I could really encourage everyone with is that everyone has doubts. It's what you do with them. You have to keep moving forward.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I think it would be inhuman almost to not experience doubt at some point. And I think that's an excellent message that even when we do experience doubt, there is that faith and that, that the trust, the T, that next step will be available to you. And yeah, we need that. That is very hope filled. So thank you.
Well,
Okay. So you've given us a great story, triumph and determination and following God's will and miracles and support and all sorts of wonderful things. Do you have any, um, I guess, last, I call them warrior words, some advice that you would like to, maybe that you haven't shared yet, that you would like to impart to anyone listening or watching?
sure, whatever it is that you're going through, whether it's a life challenge, setback, or trauma, um, just know that once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be available to you. And the reason I say that, Heather, is so many of us will struggle with freezing and like
Mm.
I don't know what to do. And you can feel overwhelmed. However, what I've come to learn throughout my life is that, I mean, even going through my voice issue, I wasn't going to get better by just not doing anything for 8 years. I had to work for 8 years. I had to get Botox treatments. I had to do my voice exercises. I had to follow that for 8 years. Um, but the reason I got there is taking my next step. So once you take your first step, that's the most important one that you have to take. Your next step is always going to be available to you. And if anyone would look at me and say that, okay, got his voice back, I would just if I knew at the beginning that it was going to take 8 years, ooh, it would have been completely overwhelming.
Right.
The
Yeah.
only reason I got there is because I just took one step at a time. So just take your first step.
Perfect advice. So thank you. Now, how can people come and learn more in more detail about the STEP program? Because you shared a little bit about it, but we don't have time to go into details on every step. So I'd like to send people to you that would like to learn more or maybe learn more about Common Goal.
Sure. Yeah, what we covered today, even though we covered a lot, is really just a 10,000-foot view of the step system. So if your audience goes to nickprefontaine.com/step, they're able to download the whole step system for
Oh,
free today. And they're
wow.
going to learn all about support, trust, energy, and persistence.
Oh, that's an excellent gift. Thank you very much. So I hope everybody listening takes Nick up on that.
You're welcome. And back to your previous question, that's a great first step.
Mm,
That's a great first step. You can go and download that.
okay. And I apologize. I've been saying step program and you call it your step system. So please
Either
forgive
one,
me for.
it's interchangeable. You can call it whatever you want.
Well, thank you for that, Grace. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm going to get the link that you just mentioned down in the show notes so everybody can get to that. And do you have I'm assuming you have some social media channels or things that they can find directly on your website that maybe if they want to follow
Yes,
you?
they should. However, I'll give it out. So I'm not on like every single platform.
Yeah. Who has
However,
time, right?
yeah, exactly. I'm on a few though. So I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Okay.
Um, so if you want to reach out to me on there, and connect with me there.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, Nick. Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your story. For your, and something else just occurred to me too. I said the word determination, but I think it fits more with the letter P, the persistence of your step system there. So I thank you for sharing that with us because I think that's an important characteristic. Um, and so I appreciate your story and your follow through and your willingness to listen to that nagging voice. And
We all have to listen to it.
yes, we all do. We all do. All right. Well, thank you very much. And everyone else, we'll be talking soon. So Nick humbly deflected the word determination I applied to multiple points in his journey, and I completely understand his reasoning. As someone who has done battle with the voice in his head and even ignored it at times, recognizing that this voice is divine is a humbling experience. Well, most of us have not experienced a traumatic brain injury. I'd be willing to bet we've all ignored that divine voice at least once, maybe more than once in our lives. We think we're inadequate or it won't work. It's not practical, like Nick said. Maybe it'll hurt us financially, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sure there are many other excuses we could come up with on the regular and probably do, right? Guilty. But but look at what Nick said happened when he stopped ignoring that voice. First, it stopped feeling like a nagging voice, and certain things got easier. The right doors were opened. The support he needed to follow through was there for him. When we stop ignoring what God wants for us, there are steps to make it happen. I'm reminded of the saying that God does not call the equipped or the qualified, but that he equips the called. Nick and I we share the calling of sharing our stories through speaking. We both do that in the form of podcasts, but we both have been called to do it from stages as well. However, he's stepped out in faith and is doing it. For me, I'm working on it, but I still feel a little like Moses in Exodus chapter 4, verse 10, when he says, "My Lord, I am not eloquent. I have never been so in the past, nor now that you have begun to speak to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." But I'm getting there. And speaking with Nick has encouraged me. Like, I hope he encouraged you to step out in faith and trust for what God has called you to do. In order to step out in faith, remember, you need support. You need to trust. You need to build and feed your energy, and you need to be persistent. I encourage everyone listening to take a moment to go to nickprefontaine.com/step and take advantage of that generous free gift Nick offered. And that link will be in the show notes as well. But one more thing that Nick said struck me, and that was his moment of beauty. We may not think of a moment of doubt as being beautiful, but like he said, it's our response to that doubt that offers hope and beauty. In this instance, there was also beauty in the response of his mother. Shout out to all the moms out there who refuse to let us sit in doubt. But she allowed him to have the moment, but only the moment. She reminded him of why they were there, why they were working so hard, and what their common goal was. With Mom's support and Nick's persistence and the energy of his mind and body, his faith was developed and lived out. So how about you? Has Nick's story encouraged you to step out and follow that divine voice? Or are you allowing yourself to stay in the moment of doubt? For me, Nick has encouraged me to continue working on the other half of my divine calling, speaking from a stage. It still scares me, but I'm not going to ignore the voice and sit in doubt. Something to think about this week. So until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless.